Testing, can you? Whoa.
Do you hear it?
Yeah, I hear myself.
How's it sound?
So good.
Thank you for listening to the Backseat Basketball Podcast, where amateurs take the wheel. With you as always, I'm Rob Stanford. You can find me at Dr. Hot Robbie. I'm also known as Slick Willie, El Tigre Chino, a.k.a. Big Chief Smoke'em, a.k.a. Hustle Westbrook, a.k.a. Afro Daddy. Next to me is Jeffrey Bittner.
Boogity, woogity, woogity, woogity. What's going on?
Nothing.
Dude, kind of a lame week in basketball times.
Dude, this is going to be kind of an interesting episode. We're going to kind of go off the cuff. We're going to do some things that we don't normally do. To our avid fans out there, we're going to be skipping the rants at the end. So if you're paying attention to that, just skip this whole episode. We don't really even care. Just, you know.
Let's. So we've got some free agency to wrap up. We've got some new rules we're going to introduce ourselves, change the game up a little bit. Thank you, Adam Silver, for showing us the light.
Yeah, I didn't realize rules could just be changed this easily, but it's going to be kind of cool to see what you and I have to think about it, I think.
Love it.
All right, so let's finish up with the boring stuff. We've got some free agency wrap-ups to do. First off, about 3 or 4 days ago, we had the Blazers off Enes Kanter a max offer sheet. He accepted that, and then this Sunday, Oklahoma City matched. What do you feel about that?
I don't think it was a huge surprise. We talked about it last episode. You know, I think Oklahoma City has to double down on what they've got. They're not going to be able to add too much. They're a little cap-strapped. They want to show Kevin Durant that they are contenders, and so they're going to have to match and add that front court talent and see how it goes. And now that they've got him, if Kevin Durant leaves, it's kind of a little bit of a backup plan, right? They needed someone at that 5 spot.
But let's be clear. Enes Kanter is not Kevin Durant.
Oh, yeah. But
he is, or he's not?
Oh, yeah, he's not. No,
okay.
I get that.
Okay.
But Enes Kanter is better than no Enes Kanter.
Right.
Unless you're going to try and develop Steve Adams, which, you know, again, we've talked about is a viable possibility. It just, you know, it depends on what they want to go. It makes more sense to have more talent, figure it out later. Obviously, Westbrook and Durant are the centerpieces there. They're going to want to keep them. They don't want another scenario where they fall just short of making the Western Conference Finals or making the finals or getting a championship.
Or anything but winning the championships. Yeah. Basically a loss at this point, even though we were talking about the Thunder as being sort of the undercard, sort of the black sheep coming into the playoff race next year. No one really expects them or no one's listening to them. But at the same time, I mean, if they don't win the championship, I think especially Thunder fans are going to view that as at least somewhat of a disappointment. But the thing that I'm interested in is Kanter gets a max offer. That's more than what Ibaka got, wasn't it?
I think he is making more than Ibaka. We'd have to look it up. I mean, that's just the new CBA. I mean, that's not the new CBA. It's the new cap. I mean,
but if we think back, right, the reason that they traded Harden in the first place was so that they could sign Ibaka. So what are the chances that this right here cap straps them enough to where they can't sign their next superstar?
That's unfortunate for them. I mean, are they really going to sign the next superstar? They're
knows?
more of a
Who
draft and stash, not draft and stash, but draft and you know, facilitate and train. And yeah, I mean, I think there's no doubt about it. I think everyone knows at this point the James Harden trade was foolish. And yeah, I mean, can you imagine them now? It's
just imagine them with James Harden, but without Serge Ibaka. 10 times better. And I'm not breaking any barriers by saying this. It's, you know, obvious. But what if Enes Kanter is the next Serge Ibaka contract? Not the next Serge Ibaka, but the next Serge Ibaka contract that keeps them from not being able to move forward.
That'd be unfortunate. Again,
Sure
I'm not sure if they're a free agency destination, more as...
Well, they have to be. As long as they have Durant, as long as they have Westbrook, they have to be a free agency destination.
You think?
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if I'd go play there.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
I don't know why, but it's just I like winning, but you know.
Yeah, that seems like a great reason to go to Oklahoma City.
There's some better places, I think. I'd rather be on the Clippers, maybe.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
Always being second fiddle to Austin Rivers?
Nah, I'd be first fiddle.
No. That's blood. You don't come first fiddle between blood.
Give me 5 minutes in with Doc. I'll be the son he never had.
Well, let's actually, that's a nice transition. Let's go over to Austin Rivers' contract. He got a 2-year deal worth $6 million. The doy, you know, like the doy.
I'm honestly shocked it wasn't for more. Right?
I was honestly expecting like a 4-year, $75 million contract, something that exceeds the max, but they pay him enough to where it's like, okay, cool, you're set for life, buddy.
Totally agree. I mean,
and to be clear, we're not saying he deserves that.
Right. No one's saying he deserves it, but it's like your dad is the boss, right? Your dad's the boss and the coach. You just kind of, I wonder if like, do you think Austin Rivers pouted about this? You think he like threw a little temper tantrum? You think he was expecting more?
Oh, duh. Yeah. Definitely. He definitely was.
Do you think it's going to be
more.
awkward at like Thanksgiving dinner this year?
He's like, oh, so you paid DeAndre max deal, but you only give me $6 million, huh?
You traveled to Texas for DeAndre. You just Skyped me.
You didn't even leave home for me.
You called me on Skype.
So that was one very uninteresting transaction that went on. Let's go to another uninteresting one and just knock these out of the park. We got Chase Budinger to the Pacers. I know you're a big Bud fan. What do you feel about Air Bud?
Air Bud's an intriguing prospect. He's obviously offensive first. He was kind of hidden back there with the Timberwolves. And the Pacers, I know for a fact, I watched a Larry Bird interview. They're trying to go small ball, more offensive. They're trying to get rid of their kind of defensive shell because the league's evolving, and they obviously lost David West and Roy Hibbert. So Chase Budinger is always going to provide you a little bit of a spark off the bench. So I think it's an interesting pickup. The one thing I found most interesting about the Indiana Pacers, and maybe this is a telling sign of that, is Larry Bird's plan is to have Paul George play more 4, so small ball 4. And I don't think Paul George is super stoked about that. And Larry Bird basically came out and said, Paul George doesn't make the decisions here.
Tough titties.
Yeah, exactly. So, and this just goes to show you, more shooting, less defensive, less big men-esque basketball. They're going to adapt a little bit, which is strange. I mean, I guess maybe you have to do that because you lost David West. But I mean, they weren't bad when everyone was healthy, right? And
and the reason they didn't win last year had nothing to do with David West. It was 100% a Paul George injury, right? And Paul George brings one of the best defensive games in the entire league. Let's see what happens when he comes back. But at the same time, like, he's the superstar of the team, you know? He's going to be the one that the game revolves around. What I'm interested in is that Chase Budinger is playing with Monte Ellis again over there in Indiana. They were together in Minnesota a couple years back, and now they're back in Indiana. That was when Monte Ellis had his best season up there in Minnesota, but it's probably not because of Chase Budinger. Let's be perfectly clear here.
Dude, who knows? Maybe just Chase is like the best.
He's a facilitator.
He's the best 3-point shooting facilitator out there.
Yeah.
That would be insane.
I think none of those words describe Chase Budinger. So let's go to something a little bit more interesting. A perennial all-star in Darren Williams going to the Mavericks. Actually, he got bought out. He wasn't a free agent.
Right.
He was on the Nets. They bought his contract out, and he was free to sign with the team, and he signed with the Mavs.
Yeah.
Fills a much-needed spot. They had a point guard spot open, obviously, with the debacle with Rondo last year, and he kind of fills in nicely from what I see.
It ends up being a decent pickup for the Mavs. You know, it's interesting. Paul Pierce came out last year with this big whole interview basically ripping Williams, and he alluded to the fact that Williams wasn't able to live up to the hype that a big market provides, right? He was in Utah, and he was supposed to be he was getting MVP looks, but
in Utah he was. Can we really consider the Brooklyn Nets though a major market team?
I don't know.
I understand they're from Brooklyn,
right? And I don't know if he said that just because it is New York. I'm not sure. I guess.
But originally they're the New Jersey Nets, which is the smallest of markets, really. Like the Rhode Island Nets, maybe.
You're so logical. Should we call up Paul Pierce?
Yeah.
We actually have Paul Pierce on later today.
Yeah, we'll see what he has to say about that.
No, I agree with you. I mean, I think, if the Knicks are bad, I guess if I was living in New York and the Knicks were bad, mm-hmm. I'd watch the the Brooklyn Nets, right?
But they're bad too.
Yeah, they are. But there was a lot of hope when they were paying like $100 million for a roster, and
I remember when they were paying $20 million for Darren Williams, and we saw how bad that worked out. I mean, they bought him out for his last 2 years of his contract.
Yeah,
it's not like he's going to be a free agent next year.
So, and that's the thing. So, if you're the Mavs and you have basically Chandler Parsons, an injured Wes Matthews, and an aging Dirk Nowitzki.
It's win now. You have to win now.
You have to win now. It's a point guard league, and the fact that you don't have a point guard is like...
It's troublesome.
That's sad. It's just sad.
It's sad, troublesome, worrisome, upsetting. There's a bunch of different adjectives we can throw in there.
Yeah.
But like definitely one of those applies.
So it's good. It's good. My understanding was that he approached Duran, approached the...
God.
Let me just
give you some back up here. Jeff has never pronounced Darren Williams' name correctly for as long as I've known him, which has been the better part of about, 12 years at this point or something like that. Regardless, the better part of the time I've known him, he's referred to him as Deron Williams.
How do you say?
It's Darren, like a name, like a first name. Darren.
Why is there an E and an O in there? Okay, Darren Williams. I think it's a good pickup for the Mavs. I think it ends up becoming a good pickup for the Mavs. They had no other spot. Might as well take a gamble and see what happens, right?
They've got money to spend. I mean, they were going to pay DeAndre.
They've got money to spend. And now you have like...
Especially because Dirk took that cut.
Oh, yeah.
I bet he's wishing he took that money now.
You have like a bargain bin starting five. I still don't know what you're going to do at center. It's just real sad because they were so lacking at the point guard in the center spot with some decent prospects of the 2, 3, 4. They've made up a little bit of ground. And, I'm thinking, knock on wood, Emeka Okafor for the 5 spot.
Oh, that would be a signing, he said extremely sarcastically.
I don't know where else you go. I don't think Zaza is going to help you out here.
No, I think maybe you move Dirk to 5 and dive into the plethora of 4s that the league has. So let's go from the current Mavs point guard to the former Mavs point guard, Rondo, going to the Kings. What are your thoughts?
Again, Kings are kind of in the same spot of the Mavs where
they're poopy.
Yeah, they're not good. They've got some spots they have to upgrade. And I think Rondo fits here. It's been long rumored that the Kings were looking to trade for Rondo. Mm-hmm. They were in the trade talks with the Mavs, with the Celtics.
Sure.
And he ended up going to the Mavs. I think this works here. I think they deserve their own reality TV show. When you get Rajon Rondo and Willie Cauley-Stein and DeMarcus Cousins.
What would you call that TV show?
Give me 5 minutes, and then I'll come up with something.
Okay, we'll circle back to the Kings reality TV show. Let's talk about...
What do you think about Rondo to the Kings?
I've got nothing to think about him. He's, from what I've seen in the past 3 years, a garbage point guard. I mean, he's serviceable in the passing game. He's never been able to shoot. He didn't improve that in Dallas. The one thing he did do was shoot more often, which is not really something you want from someone who doesn't shoot well, So I think that, it's not like they took a step backwards because Darren Collison has never started in a significant role. So it's not like they took a step backwards, but I wouldn't say they took a significant step forwards either.
I think one of the smartest things here, it's a short deal. It's not like they shelled out max money for him.
Yeah, there's not a ton of risk here.
12 months ago, Rajon Rondo was
unemployed.
He was.
He was supposedly
3 months ago he was unemployed. 12 months ago he was getting a max from the Lakers. Remember that? I mean, it was guaranteed that the Lakers were going to offer him max money. He performed so horribly at the Mavs that his stock just dropped. I think this is going to be an interesting scenario for him. I mean, look at it. I mean, the Kings, we joke about them a lot here as an organization on this podcast in the few short episodes that we've had, but they went something like 8-5 or 10-5 in their first 13, 15 games. And then DeMarcus got sick and they fired his coach, his favorite coach, for no reason, and things went downhill. So it's hard to say what's going to happen. I think this is an upgrade at the point guard slot. And if DeMarcus and their new coach can get along, maybe they can contend for the 10th and 9th spot. Maybe they stay in that playoff race for the first half of the season and drop off. It's hard to tell.
All right, so my reality TV show name for the Kings is going to be called King's Ransom. And what's going to happen is instead of dressing 12 players each night, they're only going to dress 11. And it's up to the fans to determine which of the 12 players isn't dressed, because it's basically a bunch of no-names outside of, DeMarcus Cousins and Rondo at this point. Bunch of no-names. The fans have to decide which one of the 12 players isn't dressed. And if you get it right, you get season tickets to the Kings game, because we know those aren't sold out.
Wait, what's the name?
King's Ransom.
King's Ransom.
Basically because you're taking a player ransom. Like a kidnapping almost.
That's good. I like that.
We'll come back to yours here in a minute, but let's head over from one aging point guard to an aging small forward. Caron Butler signing with the Kings, another Kings player. 2-year deal for Caron Butler. What is he, 36? That puts him at a 38-year-old contract when it expires. What do you think about him?
Caron Butler at one point in time was one of the most underappreciated Clippers. And,
one of the most underrated players in the NBA, according to Jeff Bittner about 3 years ago.
I thought Caron Butler provided that veteran leadership, that 12-point smooth stroke. Maybe he can provide like a little bit of common sense to this team. It's going to be...
I honestly, I agree with you. I'm not going to knock this signing too much. The 2 years is a little bit concerning just due to the age. That being said, veteran leadership coming off the bench can't be overstated. I mean, it's a huge thing, especially for a team like the Kings, who has majority rookie contracts, a coach who supposedly isn't getting along with their superstar, and bringing in another, future headache in possibly Rondo. So veteran leadership, it's not going to hurt them,
Agreed.
It's not going to hurt.
Agreed. My name.
What?
My name is going to be for the Kings, for the reality TV show.
Sorry.
Game of Combs. They all got kind of a little bit of funky hair.
Okay.
Hey, guys, I was given 90 seconds, all right?
Yeah. Let's maybe circle back to that. Let's see if you can't think of something a little bit better. But for now, let's move on to another Clipper signing.
Can we get a Twitter vote? Just see, is it
King's Ransom or what was yours again?
Game of Combs?
Yeah. Oh my goodness. It's not even going to be a competition.
We understand that you've never seen Game of Thrones, Rob. It was a pun. It was a play on words.
I get the pun. I get the pun.
I don't think you do, sir.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so let's go to another signing here. We've got Josh Smith going to the Clippers. Kind of probably the biggest signing of the weekend outside of maybe one we'll talk about next, which is Amare. But Josh Smith to the Clippers. How do you think he fits in on that roster?
I think this is a huge pickup. I mean, the first episode we were originally talking about, they were going to have to re-sign DeAndre, and if they didn't re-sign DeAndre, they weren't going to really have much room to do anything. And now they've not only re-signed DeAndre, but they've loaded their roster. I mean, they were basically cap-strapped, and they had basically a what can be considered a championship formula team. And they obviously lost. They didn't make it to the Western Conference Finals, but they got really darn close. And in an offseason where it looked like they weren't going to be able to do much, they pulled some rabbits out of the hat, man. I mean, Lance Stevenson, upgrade at the 2. I still love J.J. Redick. I hope J.J. Redick starts. But if Lance Stevenson can get his act together, Blake Griffin and Chris Paul yell at him a little bit,
yeah,
he's going to be great off the bench. I think Paul Pierce as a replacement for Matt Barnes, the truth is on fire. I love that pickup. And now you've got Josh Smith. It's pretty insane. I mean, you basically have 3 superstar leaders in Chris Paul, Blake Griffin, DeAndre Jordan. And now you have, their whole thing was depth, right? They weren't deep enough to win.
Right. And to be honest with you, I mean, they definitely got bigger, and they've secretly made the most moves in the offseason before anyone else, They've added, like you said, a ton of players, a ton of talent.
Not to mention the steal in Austin Rivers.
Well, the best player in the free agency, to be honest with you. You know? Like, by far the best player in the free agency. Forget LaMarcus Aldridge. Forget DeAndre Jordan. Austin Rivers coming back to Los Angeles to play for the Clippers, and not to mention his dad. Oh, that's going to do wonders. But sarcasm aside, they had, you know, as far as the free agent class is concerned, one of the best free agency classes in the NBA.
I think you're right. I think they secretly made some great moves. They secretly picked up a lot of depth on their bench. Honestly, and I think this is going to be, and Rob and I plan to go into some betting episodes going over.
Oh, we'll talk about some lines.
Talking about some lines later. I think this is going to be my dark horse championship bet. Frankly, I might put a little money on it.
Well, I wouldn't listen to him if I were you guys.
No one said I was right.
No, it's
passionate.
betting. It's all guessing, really. Let's talk about the one we said we were going to talk about. Amari Stoudemire, signing with the Heat, going to Miami.
Miami.
I think that's a big signing. I mean, I think it's nice to add depth, especially when your starter at that position is Chris Bosh, and he had his health concerns last year. It's super important to add depth there. Amari is a shell of the player he was back in Phoenix, but he's really not that much worse than he was in New York when he got his max deal.
Yeah, I think it's a huge pickup for Miami. I just think they're definitely going to win the award for skinniest big guys.
Oh, yeah.
Like, they're all
definitely.
just, like, really skinny, like that lean muscle. Like, no one has any size to them.
Right. I mean, the part for me is that he adds more veteran leadership on an already veteran-heavy team. He's not going to, and we've been using that word a ton, veteran leadership, that term a ton, you know. But he's not going to hinder the team at all. And he went to a team that he feels has a chance to really compete for a championship. And to be honest, they play in the East, so competing for a championship, not that bad.
Yeah, you might hate me for this, but I'm a little jelly, man. I mean, you got Goran Dragic, Gerald Green.
Dude, it's the
Amari
2010 Suns.
The Amari Stoudemire. Like, I might jump on the Heat bandwagon now. Like, put this on the record, episode 4, because I'm seeing a lot of orange and purple with the red and black jerseys over there.
And I won't get mad at you. We haven't talked about the Suns in maybe an episode. It might have even been 24 hours since you and I have talked about the Suns, so we're doing okay.
Miracle.
Just one mention
Miracle.
in 24 hours is pretty good. Yeah, so let's go on. What other free agents do we have to talk about? That's
Lou
pretty
Williams.
much it, huh? Oh, yeah, Lou Williams to the Lakers. How do you feel about that? He's a good player.
He's good. Potential 6 man of the year last year. Or was he the 6 man of the year? Who won 6 man of the year last year?
I don't know, man. We're amateurs taking the wheel.
Why am I blanking?
Why would we remember sixth man?
I don't know. I think it's a good pickup. In my opinion, Lou Williams is a great guy who can score in bunches for a good team, right? But the problem with the Lakers is they're not a good team. So it's going to be interesting. I wonder if Lou Williams is going to take to...
Lou Williams was 6 man last year.
That's what I thought. Kobe Bryant's tutelage, we'll see. You know? So we got D'Angelo Russell, we have Kobe Bryant, Nick Young.
Maybe
Swaggy P gets traded.
With that being said, that's not saying you can't bump Kobe down to the 3 and put Lou in it too.
I mean, you can do whatever you want.
Put Lou at 2.
Not advised.
Put Lou at 2.
Not advised. So you're saying D'Angelo Russell.
Yep.
Lou Williams.
Yep.
Kobe.
Mm-hmm. Julius Randle. Jordan Hill.
And Roy Hibbert.
Jordan Hill. Roy Hibbert's coming off the bench.
You're going to bench Roy?
Did you watch the Pacers last year?
Is Jordan Hill still a free agent?
I have no idea. I'm hoping he comes back to the Lakers just so I'm right in this conversation. But Roy Hibbert's going to start.
He seems like he'd be a good Blazer. Would you want him on the Blazers?
I mean, we've got Myers Leonard. We've got Mason Plumlee now at center.
Who's your 4 though?
Noah Vonleh. We also added Ed Davis from the Lakers last year. We're set at big man. We need some swing. We need some swing men. We need some a 2 guard. Possibly we definitely need a 3, but possibly a 2 guard as well. So
this is just off the top of my head. Look for Jordan Hill to end up on the Knicks. I don't know why my gut's saying that, but it seems like they've got a spot in need. It seems like he's not garnered that much interest as of yet. And he's a decent player, man. I mean, he can play.
Yeah,
Funny guy. It's gonna be sad to break up Swaggy P and Jordan Hill's off-court interviews. But
the one interesting part about Jordan Hill is that, aside from Andre Iguodala, in the league right now, he's probably the best U of A player. Out of the multitude of players out of U of A, he's probably the best one. I mean, we talked about Chase Budinger earlier. Where's Derek Williams at? You know, what's happening with Aaron Gordon?
Oh, Derek Williams is on the Knicks.
But what's happening with him? You know, like what's happened in his past 5 years that took him from the 8th overall pick to go playing for the Knicks, which is the perfect example.
How is
anyone on the Knicks is like, okay, your career ended somewhere that didn't go the way you planned.
How did my reality show Game of Combs miss out on Derek Williams?
All right, so from some free agency news, let's go to some law, would you say, or some legal news?
Still, I mean, just wrapping up. I mean, so we're wrapping up the.
Oh, we have another one?
No, I mean, no. We're going to talk about the Ty Lawson DUI. It's not necessarily free agent. There's been some trade talks.
Right.
This whole offseason, there's been trade talks around DeMarcus Cousins and the Nuggets in general. It seems like the Nuggets have been waiting to blow up their team since halfway through last year, right? They've been trying to get rid of Kenneth Faried, trying to get rid of Ty Lawson. And Ty Lawson was reported over the weekend got a DUI. So everything I've read said...
A DUI in Los Angeles.
In Los Angeles.
Does that mean he gets traded to the Lakers? We
No.
know he's familiar with the roads.
I mean, Jimmy B was hanging out with Mark Wahlberg doing like entourage tours.
If you have money, why are you not hanging out in Los Angeles?
That's the thing is they all go to Los Angeles. It doesn't matter where you play at. You just actually on the road for 6 months and you go hang out in LA for the summertime, the 3 months that you have off. Ty Lawson got a DUI. So the word is the Nuggets have been trying to trade him for a while. A lot of teams have been interested, but the Nuggets asking price is too high. They've been waiting for him to come down.
Right.
And in my opinion, the DUI hurts his value, obviously.
But how much?
The reports that I read, and these are all just insiders in the NBA. If you guys want to check out my feed or Rob's feed, we have lists on our Twitter where we follow the NBA insiders. It's really the easiest way to get the most up-to-date information about trade talk. You get all the ESPN insiders on there. Just follow the list. But supposedly it cratered his value a lot. And I say cratered because I'm quoting one of the insiders. But I mean, supposedly they were already asking too much for him. He's not a leader. There's a lot of people that came out and said that he's just not a leader, doesn't know how to lead his group, and the DUI doesn't help. I mean, it's always weird for a fan base, right? When you're a fan of a losing team and you just want so bad for your team to be good, and then you hear these things pop up in the news. As a Suns fan, you know, I've seen these things. PJ Tucker with the DUI,
PJ.
Felony charges for the Morai twins. I mean, so it's unfortunate.
But how much did the felony charges for the Morris twins hurt Marcus Morris's trade value and going to the Pistons? Was he going to get valued much higher as far as market value goes than what he went for?
It's a great question. I don't know if we'll ever know that answer because a lot of those are back channel conversations. And obviously the Suns dumped 3 players for a second-round pick because they're doing a salary dump, right? They were doing a Hail Mary for LMAO.
Yeah.
And so we won't know. I mean, so what is this? How does this hurt Ty Lawson's trade value? It's hard to tell, you know? It's going to be interesting to see where he ends up. I mean, there's a lot of people who say that him and Kenneth Faried are gone. You know, they're looking to rebuild. And
to speak to that a little bit, I think that the reason they're throwing Kenneth Faried in there as gone, quote unquote, is mostly because they want Ty out so badly. They say the only reason that we're going to get Ty out and get a reasonable, player back in return is if we package him with K. Faried.
Yeah, I think with either of them, they've both kind of been. I mean, Kenneth Faried, when he played on the USA team last summer, there was a lot of thoughts that he was going to kind of be a breakout star, and he just didn't perform.
He took a couple steps back last year.
He was up there with Serge Ibaka and some of these other names that have progressed and have gotten better, and he's still kind of back to the basket, kind of 4 spot, and he in my opinion took a step back a little bit. And Ty Lawson's always been underrated. He's a shoot first point guard, which is valued. I would like to see, I think Ty Lawson would flourish in a Knicks system. Not to just be real Knicks heavy this episode, but I think he would flourish in that kind of system. I agree with you. I think the reason why we're hearing both, I think they're at this point, they know this team can't succeed. They're ready to do a complete rebuild.
Right.
We see teams do various levels of rebuild. Some take it down half a step. The Suns tried to rebuild, ended up being decent.
And then you see the other flip of the coin with the Sixers, right?
Exactly. Complete rebuild. So I wouldn't be surprised if they flip Ty Lawson and Kenneth Faried for some young players with potential and draft picks. That's what you do, right? I mean, you sell on your veterans, and at a certain point, certain teams want older players and are willing to give up some potential because they want to win now, right?
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, and if anyone wants to listen to the description I had last week on the difference between rebuilding, tanking, and building through the draft, and how I stumbled through my rant last week, please go back and listen to that podcast. We'd really appreciate it. But let's get out of player talk and let's talk about some rule changes that have been implemented in the NBA and some that we wish were implemented and weren't. And then eventually we'll get into our potential favorite rule changes that we would add to the NBA. But for now, Adam Silver proposed that the change in conference seeding is going to affect the playoff seeding. So basically what that means, as I stumble over my words here, is that division seeding doesn't automatically, if you win your division, it doesn't give you one of the top 4 spots in the playoffs. Numbers 1 through 8 in the conference are going to be the ones who go to the playoffs, as always, but they're also going to go to the playoffs in that order, which is different than last year, because last year we had the Blazers ending in 6th in the West, but getting the number 4 spot because they won the Pacific Division.
Yeah, it just, in my opinion, you felt it with how insanely good that first series was between the Clippers and the Spurs. Mm-hmm. And everyone knew the only reason this game was being played, it felt like a Western Conference final series. The only reason those two teams were playing was this weird division title, hang a banner for Portland scenario. It just didn't feel right,
Right. And I honestly think they maybe even should have taken it one step further. Instead of saying the top 8 teams in each conference gets a playoff spot in that order, I think it should be the top 16 teams in the NBA gets into the playoffs.
Agreed. And everyone's got their own opinion on this kind of this setup. Mark Cuban proposed a 10-team playoff system. There's long been talk about just taking the best 16 teams and letting them go to the playoffs. I think ultimately when you look at it, and this is just me, when you look at the playoffs this past year, the Golden State Warriors won. Yes, did they win a championship? They didn't have to play the Clippers, and they didn't have to play the Spurs. To me, that's a little asinine, right? And I get the chips fall where they may, but part of that was skewed by the simple fact of this divisional rule. So ultimately, the way these things work is they get talked about, there's a competition committee, and then I believe the owners actually vote on it. So
right. So we'll see if that happens. We'll see if what David Silver proposed and the competition committee proposed actually goes into effect here based on the owners' vote, as you mentioned.
The second thing that Adam Silver announced is basically that the competition committee wasn't worried about the hack-a-shack play. Thoughts on that?
I think people know my thoughts on that. I think that it absolutely should be brought up. There needs to be a way to quell that. It's detrimental to the game immensely, and in my opinion, it's the single biggest problem with the NBA. Last 3 years, it was flopping. They fixed flopping for the most part. There's still a problem with it, but at least players have retribution. They don't get away with it. Players get away with hack-a-shacks. They get away with the hack-a-DeAndres. They get away with the hack-a-Dwights. I mean, this is the single biggest problem in the NBA right now.
Let me ask you this, and this just came to me, so you're going to have to flush out this idea with me, all right?
Okay.
How did flopping get nixed? What was the solution there?
It was by finding the players.
Finding the players,
Correct.
Exactly. What if we took that same exact strategy
But how do you determine? I get where you're going with this, and you can go ahead and finish that thought. Go ahead.
What if we took that same exact strategy and we applied it to free throws? So a player, if they've shot X amount of threes, we'll go 10. If they shoot 10 free throws in a game, if they miss more than 40% of those and they start getting up and above 10, there's financial penalties.
For which player? The free throw shooter?
The free throw shooter. The free throw shooter.
But that would only exacerbate the problem. At that point, you have everybody fouling DeAndre Jordan. You have Big Baby Davis. Shout out to Cheeseman for bringing that question up last week. But you have Big Baby Davis coming in, and as soon as he gets in, fouling DeAndre Jordan 5 times, 6 times a game. Going out, hoping DeAndre Jordan misses a certain amount, cuts into that max deal, and before you know it, DeAndre Jordan is bankrupt.
Okay, so here's the thought: is there was been talk. Part of the reason why DeAndre was moved to sign with the Mavs is there's been some tension between Chris Paul and him. Not only because Chris Paul can be an ass, right? Because he's a leader, a strict leader, but also
a competitor.
He's a competitor. But there's word that Chris Paul was upset that he just never practices free throws. And so let's put a financial penalty to it and say, you know what, dude, if you miss a certain amount of free throws, we're going to start fining. Maybe it's not a lot. $5,000. The dude makes $20 million a year. Even if we fine him $50,000 every playoff game, he's still decent, but he's going to put some more time in the gym, right?
So yes, I get where you're coming. I don't think that that's a reasonable solution to this. But on that side of the coin, I think that the reason that the competition committee decided not to approach it is because there's not really a reasonable option out there. How do you stop it?
Okay, here's the other solution. The team gets the bill. So there's a financial...
They don't care. What's $50,000 a Steve Ballmer?
You up it, Maybe you do $10,000 every missed free throw, over 10 free throws below 50%. So if
that means
you go...
DeAndre Jordan basically but lost the Clippers, $150,000 worth of free throws last year?
Yeah.
That's nothing.
No, you up it. You up it to like $20,000
$1 million a free throw?
$20,000 a free throw. What's your number? Hit us up on Twitter. If you think this is even close to a relatively good idea, at Jeffrey Bittner, let me know. I want to hear. We're going to flush this out. We're going to make this a real thing.
If you've actually got a better idea than Jeff's, which I would hope that you do.
I would hope so, too.
Hit me up at Dr. Hot Robbie. I'd love to hear it because I think that Jeff's wrong on this one.
So Hack-a-Shaq's is not going to be changed.
Hack-a-Shaq's done. I don't see an option to get it in, but one thing that is interesting is you and I have compiled a list of rules that we would like to see. I think this is going to be interesting.
We've compiled a list of rules that other sports have taken on.
Right.
And we're going to talk about whether they're applicable, whether it be good ideas, bad ideas for the NBA.
So, yeah, this is basically what we're doing is we're taking, as Jeff said, rules from other sports, seeing how they work in that sport, actually seeing the praxis of it, and seeing how they would apply to the NBA game. We've compiled a list of a couple here, so I'll let you go ahead and start off. What's one rule that you would like to see happen?
I would like to see one-on-one and or bump out for overtime games.
Okay, so it's like a soccer shootout
it's
almost.
It's like a soccer
or
shootout.
Or a hockey shootout.
Exactly. It's like a soccer or a hockey shootout, except it's one-on-one or bump out. I like bump out. Either one works. So you have to pick your best player. So, I mean, if you're the Rockets, you pick James Harden, but then what if your best player is DeMarcus Cousins? Like, he seems like he'd get schooled. So then it's like, it's this kind of chess game, right?
Yeah.
It's a secret
Plus,
submission.
who would guard LeBron, really? In the league, Can you imagine any player ding him up one-on-one? I can imagine players. See, I can imagine players. I can imagine players ding him up one-on-one, but then on the flip side of the coin, to actually score on him one-on-one is another story. So
okay, so the question about that, and this is the only thing I got to clarify for my OCD, is it makers takers
for bump out or for
the one-on-one?
No, one-on-one. Oh, absolutely.
Is it makers takers?
Dude, street rules.
I don't think I've ever played a basketball game makers takers.
I don't know if I've ever played a basketball game not makers takers.
Wow. All right, what do you got?
Next one up is this is stolen from football, and all the refs like Ed Hockley Holding, number 72 offense, 10-yard penalty. All the other refs in sports have microphones, whether you look at the NFL, you look at soccer. Why don't referees in the NBA have microphones? I don't want to have to see a replay of Joey Crawford screaming at the refs on the bench, technical foul on 42! Technical foul on 40! No, 42! And then, watching it on YouTube, 10 days later and being like, what did he say? Why don't they have microphones?
I don't have a good answer for you on that.
I don't either. It seems asinine to me.
Maybe it has something to do with, in basketball, players come up to the refs a lot more and try and explain themselves. They try and have a discussion. I get there's an on-off switch on the microphone. Maybe there's just too much commotion. That doesn't really happen in football. It's not like a player's coming up there and being like, I actually caught that football.
Right. But at the same time, the refs don't do it for the players to hear. The refs do it because they need the fans to hear. They need the other referees to hear. They need the broadcasters to hear.
Right, but I'm just saying, maybe there's a concern that there's a microphone, it gets flipped on, you hear a basketball player cursing at a ref. That happens.
That happens in every sport.
Yeah, but if you broadcast it over the loudspeaker.
But it happens in football.
But not broadcast it over the loudspeaker.
Because they figured it out. I'm saying NBA needs to figure it out. They need to get mics on refs, and they need to figure out how to work it.
Adam Silver, if you're listening, we don't have all the deets worked out. We've got some general guidelines.
We've got outline plans.
We're not going to think too deeply about this.
What's your next one?
Next one. Managers, assistant coaches arguing calls more and loudly and allowed to be a little bit more abrasive with arguing calls.
What sport does this apply to?
Baseball. When they kick dirt or steal bases. And then I'd like to just see the ejection more.
Oh, yeah.
Of coaches and assistant coaches. There seems to be a number of flagrants.
Right.
But they're all courtesy flagrants. It's like the coach doing it just so they can get props for
right.
I think it should be a little bit more encouraged. But
kicking dirt on them like the baseball coach does. What could a basketball coach do to a referee that's the equivalent of a baseball coach kicking dirt on an umpire?
I don't know if I have a good answer for that.
Steal the game ball after he gets ejected and walks back to the locker room?
Just kicks it across the court.
Punts it, yeah, something like that. Maybe gets a boost from DeAndre Jordan and Doc Rivers just hangs from the rim until he's physically removed from the stadium.
Just pops the
I
ball.
just need more temper tantrums. I agree with that. I like that.
It's just the game of basketball has been buttoned up a lot, which for good reason. I get it, but then it's we can taper it back a little bit.
It's not golf.
We don't have to button it up so much. What you got?
Next one is going to be, remember how we were talking about the Kings and their cherry picking rule that their owners proposed? Or not the rule, how they wanted to play cherry picking?
Yeah.
I've got something that can potentially stop that. It's going to be offsides the way that soccer does it, where the furthest offensive player can't receive the ball past the furthest defensive player without the ball being passed first. It kind of cuts down on fast breaks a little bit. It cuts down on transition to a certain extent, but it adds to the defensive game. You get a game in basketball that resembles more of a college game where people are on athletically the same playing field.
You think that's good? Would you prefer that?
As a fan, yeah, I would.
I'm kind of the opposite on that one, but
see, you like personal accolades. I like team play. That's where we really differ. You're a fan of LeBron. I'm a fan of Timmy Duncan.
Whoa, dude. Whoa, you're just going to throw me out there like that?
Who were you cheering for in the finals last year?
I was cheering for the Cavs.
Let's just say it wasn't the Warriors.
I was cheering for the Cavs. It was a feel-good story. I was cheering for LeBron. I felt like
I rest
he took
my
him
case.
that far, you know?
What's your next one?
Tag team subs, like in WWE or hockey. So basically, they get a substitution, but the play doesn't stop, time doesn't stop, right?
Right.
So maybe this replaces those free throw subs. Maybe this replaces that. And so it's basically imagine someone passing the ball and someone bringing the ball up. And if you want to sub one of your players, it's just that guy has to run to the sideline, tag the other guy in, and that guy comes in. Yeah. It gets a little crazy. It's there's going to be some strategy behind it. You got to practice it a little bit. You got to practice the rotation. I did a relay race in middle school, and I ran too fast for the guy behind me.
That's probably not true.
He couldn't pass me the baton. I'll introduce you to the guy. Couldn't pass me the baton. I mean, it takes some practice.
Okay. No, I like that. No stoppage for timeouts. That makes sense. I'm really on a soccer kick today. I love these soccer rules, and I think they apply to the NBA nicely. But my next one is going to be flagrant fouls, as you mentioned earlier, are going to work a lot like red and yellow cards do. So if you get a flagrant 1, it's going to be similar to a yellow card. And if you get a flagrant 2, it's a red card. Now, that's not different from in the NBA. The different part is if a player on your team gets a red card, then you have to play a man down the rest of the game. It's going to be 4 versus 5. Or potentially 3 versus 5 or 2 versus 5.
So basically, if someone gets ejected, okay, what happens if they get ejected from the bench?
What?
So,
like Tim Duncan did?
yeah, people get ejected from the bench every once in a while.
Then he can't come back in the game. I'm saying if a person on the court...
That's what I was just clarifying. So if they're on the court, it's 4-on-5.
Right.
If they're off the court, still 5-on-5, but obviously that person's ejected, so they can't come back. I like it. It makes teams like...
Not draft DeMarcus Cousins.
The game
Not
of,
draft
the
the
game
Morai
of
brothers.
The game of Combs. Makes it interesting.
All right. What's your next one?
I just ultimately think timeouts should be handled differently. I think we got too many timeouts. So I'm just saying timeouts lesson.
So what is... I think the timeout situation in the NBA is extremely confusing because of the TV timeouts and the mandatory timeout that you have to take after 2 minutes on a dead ball or whatever it is. But as it is right now, each team gets 6 timeouts per half.
It's
6,
asinine.
12, 18... It's 24 timeouts in a game.
Asinine.
That's crazy. It has to be lessened. I agree with you there. My next one is going to be more along the lines of what the fans' rules are. And it's not really a rule. It's like what they should do. I think fans in the NBA need to be more like fans of outdoor sports, right? Like the fans in baseball do the wave. Or the fans in football for the Steelers have the terrible towel that they're waving back and forth. Or in soccer, they have the vuvuzela that they're... You know? That would be awesome inside of a stadium. That would be amazing inside of an arena.
I agree. I think if we can get fans more involved, I mean, I like that outdoor atmosphere feel.
Yeah.
You know, I like that. My next one, 35-second shot clock in the playoffs, like college basketball. So I basically want, to some degree, there to be a whole new strategy for the playoffs.
Playoffs versus regular season?
Right. It's like, this is the regular season. Now you're playing playoffs, baby.
And it makes sense. They say defense wins championships, and in a 35-second shot clock to win, you have to play defense.
You have to play defense. It would taper down. And see, that's the thing, is it would taper down a little bit that offense first team, which the league is actually kind of lean towards, right? It's an interesting idea. I would also, consequently, be open to a shorter shot clock in the playoffs.
Just
12 seconds.
You're basically just saying change the shot clock for the playoffs, right?
24 seconds is like this weird middle point. I don't love it.
12 might be a little short, right?
It's crazy.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. My next one, and from my opinion, the most obvious one, would be players are allowed to fight like they do in hockey, and it's stopped once one player goes to the ground. Now, the one problem is the reason fights are allowed in hockey is because they can't really get their footing and they're swinging and not really putting a bunch of power behind it because they can't. But I would love to see a Kevin Garnett versus a LeBron James fight. Oh, God. That would be amazing.
I like that. I don't think that's ever going to happen in basketball.
Of course not.
But like if you could just like do some of that like chest bumping, like there's a lot of the basketball fights, majority of them, right? 95% of them are just getting in each other's fists. Nothing actually happens. You do a little chest bumping. You know, you're 1 inch from the guy's face and you're saying some stuff. If we just kept that, right, and there's just no swings, I'd be cool with that too. Or it's just like, they're just arguing. Let them argue. Let them argue.
What if you're, instead of being allowed to punch, you're only allowed to kick? You can do high kicks, sweep the legs. You can do takedown moves, but the fight's over after that.
You can only pelt them with basketballs. You can have one to block if you'd like in dodgeball. My other one is offensive goaltending.
Oh, yeah, dude. Back-to-back obvious ones for us.
Nix the offensive goaltending. I mean, this is completely contradictory to my last one. but I think we're going offensive heavy league. Let's double down on it. I want to see some like crazy off the backboard dunks. I want to see it just, no more offensive rebounds. I shouldn't be able to hinder my own shot, especially if I make it, right?
Right, but I don't get why this isn't already a rule. I mean, if the
Agreed.
ball's over the cylinder, it's going in no matter what, and you're penalizing the team for putting it in faster?
Yeah.
What's going on? I mean, this is already a rule that isn't viewed in European or world basketball. Like, literally the NBA and college basketball are the only two entities that,
And
observe it.
I wonder if it has something to do with...
I actually don't even know if college does, but either way.
I mean, maybe it's just like we got too tall of players where it's just like it would be too easy. I'm not sure exactly what the thought process behind
Hey, but like you
is.
said, offense is better, especially in the NBA.
Loves it.
You loves it.
Loves it.
My next one, I kind of stole right from the Premier League. Another soccer one. Man, I must love soccer. I never realized I was a soccer fan until maybe I was reading it out loud just now. But I must love soccer. But anyway, the Premier League, how at the end of each year they have one team they have the opportunity to be promoted or relegated. And I think you guys know my stance on tanking and how shitty it is for the NBA. Like, it is the worst. I hate watching teams tank. The hometown teams hate watching teams tank. How great would it be if a team like the 76ers, who tanked for the better part of 60 games last year, or you can even say the past 160 games for the past 2 years, who've been literally tanking since 2012, what if they had to fight for their spot to stay in the NBA? What if, the last 3 games of the year, they had a 3-game tournament against,
The best D-League team.
the Wisconsin Cyclones, And the Wisconsin Cyclones beat the Sixers 2 out of 3 games. That's the new NBA team. Sixers are relegated into the lower league. I think that'd be great.
It gives me a lot of jolly. I don't think it's ever feasible, but I like it. And so then you stock up your D-League team. So there's a lot of teams that have...
They're already saying there should be a second league, right?
Yeah. Yeah. There is the WNBA.
Yeah, I mean, I think the D-League puts up as good of a fight as that, but I think if you improve the D-League, increase their roster size, you can make a legitimate team coming here from a random city, Omaha, Wisconsin, Nebraska, like one of these middle-of-the-road cities or, middle-of-the-America cities that kind of deserves a team. It'd be cool to see something like that to take the place of a team who's floundering, like the Sixers. Oh, my goodness. The Kings.
Sam Hinkie would actually get fired.
That's the benefit.
Yeah.
You'd actually have GMs get fired.
Good stuff, man. I think we need to move on to we're running out of time here a little bit.
Okay.
Who knew this was going to be our longest episode ever?
Dude, I was thinking that this was going to be short. We had nothing to talk about.
We've got everything to talk about, Rob. We're just such good friends.
We just talk for days. Okay. Next, we're going to move into, potential trade talks. What is your potential trade?
So Rob and I like to do a segment where, this is ultimately what Rob and I talk about on a daily basis is what if this person got traded here, right? We know the deficiencies. We take the ego out of it. We don't necessarily even really consider finance. It's just what's a move that makes both teams better? So made up trade talks. My move, Dante Exum for Ty Lawson.
Okay.
They're looking to move Ty Lawson. We just talked about earlier today. His value's created a little bit. Mm-hmm. The Utah Jazz have a ton of talent. They're supposed to contend for a playoff spot.
In the West.
Right. They're supposed to contend for a playoff spot. I think having someone like Ty Lawson, a shoot-first point guard, a veteran, someone who's, they had that huge season. I think there's a value there. And I think for Denver, Dante Exum's a good pickup.
Especially when we talked about earlier, they need to rebuild one of the 3 ways. And I think that rebuilding through youth is going to be the way to go, especially if they get rid of their core, which is Ty Lawson and Kenny Fareed.
Agreed.
Mine is going to be someone who's near and dear to my heart. I hate saying I'm going to trade you, buddy, but I'm going to say I love you, man. Myers Leonard, you're my boy. Don't take this to heart, but Myers Leonard traded from the Blazers to Toronto for Terrence Ross. My thinking behind this, Myers Leonard, at this point in his career, is not a starting 4 or 5, but he definitely has potential to be. He has the potential to be a perennial all-star, in my opinion. But, like I said, I love the dude. The reason it works out for the Raptors is because they have someone to back up Valanciunas. They have a person who stretches the court, which was what they lost in Amir Johnson this year. And the reason that it works out for the Blazers is they get their 3. They don't have anyone right now. Alan Crabb got hurt. He's going to be out for the first 6 to 8 weeks of the season. They don't have a 3 guard to play. Like, they don't have a 3. They don't have a small forward. No one can step in. And Terrence Ross is a 25-year-old person who's,
he's a person
shown in the NBA. Yeah, a 25-year-old person who's shown in the NBA that he can compete. And he's come off the bench primarily in Toronto. But his three-point shooting and athleticism is enough to get him on the starting field, especially in Toronto, or especially in Portland, where they don't really have anyone else right now.
Interesting trade for sure. And the Toronto Raptors, they got a decent seeding last year, but they looked horrible in the playoffs.
They didn't show up.
I'm surprised they didn't make more moves in this offseason, but interesting. Let's get into miscellaneous.
All right, so Mark Cuban, big man in the news, especially with the DeAndre Jordan mishap, signing, whatever you want to call it. A big guy this past week got asked about DeAndre, and he didn't seem to know who he was.
I thought this clip was hilarious. Did you see this?
I did briefly. I didn't dive into it too much. Go ahead and explain, though.
So Mark Cuban is at Summer League, and they basically ask him after the DeAndre Jordan debacle, hey, how did this go down? What are your thoughts? And Mark Cuban basically goes and pretends that DeAndre Jordan doesn't exist. And it was a pretty funny clip, and I recommend you look it up. And look up Mark Cuban, cold shoulders, DeAndre Jordan. And it's basically a 60-second clip where it's just like, hey, what about DeAndre? Who? DeAndre Jordan. Who are you talking about? DeAndre Jordan, the guy, and so the announcer starts to catch on that Mark Cuban's just kind of playing around, but Mark Cuban's not playing around. He's dead serious, and he just goes, I honestly have no idea who you're talking about. And so, obviously, Mark Cuban has moved on. That's what you have to do as a billionaire, is you take your lumps and you move on, right? You rephase and you move on. So interesting clip if you haven't seen it.
Yeah, it's a real good look up. I would suggest taking it. It's hilarious. It's hilarious. But Mark Cuban's in the news again. He talked with Steve Ballmer. What do you think about that? I think it's convenient that these two colleagues were able to put aside their differences so easily, and really the beef happened between Cuban and Jordan. I thought the beef would happen between Ballmer and Cuban.
I think it's two billionaires, right? And they're both using whatever tool they have, right? It's kind of like this unspoken agreement where it's just like, hey, we have a competition committee. We've got a league that's going to decide what our rules are. Play your best game, right? Mm-hmm. And Steve Ballmer didn't go outside the rules. I think Mark Cuban was actually quoted in saying, yeah, I would probably do the same thing. Yeah. I understand completely why they did what they did and why they went after DeAndre Jordan. It's not an honor thing. This is a game. It's like
Ballmer beat Cuban in his own game.
Totally. It's like being a hard negotiator in Monopoly. You just do it because you want to win. It doesn't matter
if you're playing against your grandma. Doesn't matter if you're playing against your sister. What matters is that you win.
Yeah, I'll give you free rent.
You play to win the game.
Free rent for the next 3 go-arounds, baby. Just give me that boardwalk.
All right, so last thing on the docket, we have my boy. This has been a pretty Blazers-heavy episode, but we've had my boy Damian Lillard posting his rap on the SoundCloud. He's been doing this for a while. He had 4 Bar Friday on Instagram, which is basically like a freestyle thing where he's, invites people to spit their four bars of freestyling. It's pretty hot, actually. But he comes on to SoundCloud and drops a fire track. Fire!
Are you going to play that?
Let's listen to a little bit of it here. We've got a clip going.
Throwing left hooks. Now I'm in the league with Steph Curry and Russell Westbrook. Took a Double bumps, boy, you never receive my chest shook. My heart came from a lion. This path, only the best took. I wanna check the critics, cause all the things they nitpick, they always seem to skip where he's.
All right, so that's Damian Lillard. He's coming in hot in the rap game. If you guys want to check it out, it's called Soldier in the Game. It's on SoundCloud. Big shout out to Dame Dalla.
He's not embarrassing himself.
No. Do you remember who was that other rapper in the NBA? Was that Iman Shumpert?
Yeah.
Dropped some rap tracks and they were bad.
They weren't good. I mean, that's the thing is with these things is they're usually kind of an embarrassment a little bit. And I'm not saying that was good, but it definitely wasn't embarrassing himself.
I'm a huge fan of rap, and I'll say that I am downloading, listening, and favoriting that track. And maybe it's just because I got a big ol', Dame Dalla high going on right now, but he's my boy.
You want to give us like an album lowdown on the next episode?
Oh yeah. Well, maybe that's something we should do.
Maybe that's your rant.
Let's add some music into this. But he's coming in fire on that track.
Love it. We're rounding out the hour now.
All right, time to end. Why don't you take us out?
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for listening to Backseat Basketball, where amateurs take the wheel. I am Jeffrey Bittner, at Jeffrey Bittner. We got Dr. Hot Robbie next to me. We appreciate all the listens. I mean, we're taking a look at the stats, and for being 4 episodes in and several hundred downloads later of every single episode, we're in a multitude of countries. United States, United Kingdom, Canada, Slovakia, Japan. I mean, literally, it's a little bit bonkers, but
we brought this up last time. I think we're going to purchase a world map and maybe put a pin in from where all our followers are coming in, and then post an Instagram or Twitter picture. That way, you guys can see where everyone's coming in at.
A few Australian listeners. It's nuts. It's really crazy. But as always, hit us up on Twitter at Jeffrey Bittner.
I'm Rob, and my name is at Dr. Hot Robbie.
We like to call him Hot Robbie around here.
He does.
Again, so you can find this episode on iTunes. Subscribe, please leave a review. You can also find us on Instagram. We're posting some things there as well. Backseatbasketball.com, and then always on Twitter as well.
We also have a YouTube page now, too.
YouTube as well. How did I forget about YouTube?
Oh, that's your baby.
YouTube.com as well. Search Backseat Basketball, and we can find us on there as well. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.